Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Firstly, thank you for joining us today. My name is Courtney Sandor and I'm the events coordinator here at Realise Business. Realise Business is a leading social enterprise empowering people to successfully run a business. Through our events, we bring our presenters, advisors and members together to share their expert knowledge in the interest of helping each other to learn and grow to their highest potential. Today's talk is part of the Business Connect program. So Business Connect is a dedicated and personalised New South Wales government program that provides trusted advice to help you start and grow your small business. So we have a highly experienced team of advisors that would be able to provide advice through this program. So if you would like some assistance, please reach out to the office to organise an appointment, or simply reply back to a thank you email you receive in coming days. So before I hand over, I'd just like to run through some quick housekeeping points. So all attendees are on mute and we ask that you stay on mute for the duration of the webinar. Let us know if you're having any audio or video issues. Ask questions at any time. We will be having a Q&A session at the end. So please put your questions in the chat box. And this session is being recorded, so you will receive a copy of it. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Keith Whelan.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome along. There's a little bit of bio on me, but I'm here to talk about really crowdfunding. And crowdfunding, for a number of you, obviously coming at different aspects of crowdfunding, obviously, whether it be a business, a not-for-profit, a sporting agency, a school. I deal a lot with startups, entrepreneurs, and SMEs when it comes to crowdfunding, particularly setting up their own campaigns. But I've also dealt a lot with arts agencies, NGOs, charities, and across the board, basically, as well. And really, is the crowdfunding a new opportunity, or crowdsourcing as it can be called as well? It's not. It's been around for a long time, nigh on best part of 20 years in some way, shape or form with the web as well, so understand that. But the first evidence crowdfunding campaign even predates the web, which is back in 1884 with the Statue of Liberty, which they considered a crowdfunding campaign, if we know it in the strictest form, basically. But crowdfunding is going to be a great opportunity for your business to look at an alternate revenue stream and really looking at a different way to get funded for your program, your project, your initiative that can gain a lot of momentum and a lot of emphasis very, very fast, basically, through your social media platforms. So look at it as a viable option. Don't see it as a get out of jail card, basically, for you as well, if you haven't been able to source funding through grants or tenders or fundraising or sponsorship or loans or stakeholder or shareholder investment. So in that regard, it could be a new opportunity for you in terms of your mindset. And have you even looked at the viability or commercial viability of crowdfunding before? But certainly it's been very much used to great proficiency by the arts sector in Australia, who've used it basically from songwriters and filmmakers and authors. Very much that's a great if you look at some of the campaigns and programs. And now it's been taken up by government and advocated by government at state and federal level to show organizations they should be looking at that. Because certainly internationally, we've seen a lot of businesses utilize crowdfunding for their startup or seed funding to get them up and going as a business, basically, or to do that piece of manufacturing, or to do that piece of retail, basically, to bring that product to market. So let's, after today, look at this as a feasible opportunity for your actual organization to think, you know what, there's a funding opportunity there for crowdfunding. The biggest issue, I think, for you in terms of crowdfunding, really, and these are some of the platforms that are there, multiple out there, right? Internationally and domestically within Australia as well. The biggest issue I find, though, with organizations is time and capacity, time to put together the campaign and capacity to deliver it, because it is a marketing campaign at the end of the day, quintessentially. So what I'm going to ask you is, what you have to ask yourself is, do you know how to sell yourself at the end of the day, basically? And think about what's out there, very much so, okay? So the crowdfunding definition, you can see the support's already there, basically, in business.gov.au, right, which is fantastic that they're already committed to this. And I wanted to reference this, basically, because they have a lot of resources available for you in that regard. And I want you to utilize these resources, basically. But it's a way to finance your business through loans, donations, or exchanging rewards and shares, okay? So the monetary return investment is not necessarily there, basically. It's through those rewards or shares or emphasis, or the dividend is coming back, basically, in the social purpose or social cause, if it's related to the charity or not-for-profit sector, basically. But it's actually to get this product to market. Certainly, if you're going to retail that product, then that organization has the opportunity, that person who's contributed in that crowdfunding campaign has an opportunity to purchase that product or service, basically. And it's very boutique, it's niche, It's a quantifiable offering they're not going to get elsewhere, which leads to that exclusivity factor around crowdfunding as well. But you need to think about this, as I said, as a marketing campaign. All right, so the same emphasis you would do offline or even other online campaigning for your product, your service, your resource, basically, you need to look at basically the same emphasis around this. And this is not necessarily what I'm seeing from a number of crowdfunding entities. Now, those entities like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, one of my favorite ones here in Australia is Pozible, P-O-Z-I-B-L-E. Not only do they have it as a platform, but there's an education component to show you indicatively how to set up your crowdfunding campaign, the do's and don'ts of your crowdfunding campaign, basically, how you should be attaining traction, basically, and a leverage point for you. And because it is an ongoing campaign, you're talking about a campaign that goes for a couple of weeks, okay? Optimally, we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks before we're going to see potential trade-off. And you're going to look at a roller coaster effect there where it goes through peaks and troughs. So I want you to think about the constant maintenance of this campaign. You can't just put it out there to market and think something's going to happen accordingly with it, basically, without emphasizing it through your other social media channels and emphasizing and creating those posts, those blogs, those videos to support it, to give it that currency and that duration and that durability as a campaign, not only to basically re-attract funders, get them back in for them to advocate it and share it and spread basically the good news story of the campaign amongst their friends and family cohort, basically, at the end of the day. So you need to think about the time and capacity factor, which is the big letdown I see from a number of campaigns and people trying to run campaigns, thinking that the service provider, whatever platform they choose, is actually going to help them do it. Well, they will to a degree, but it will be in the minutia. So you need to think about how much you need to do it through your own social media channels, whether it be LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever works for you, basically, to give you that traction point that you can share the campaign out there, okay? So plan carefully. So again, I'm looking at the first, the first template is the 5 W's, okay? Who, what, when, where, why, all right, equals how. So who are you, what do you do, where do you do it, when do you do it, why do you do it? These are the questions basically you need to ask about yourselves before you even think about bringing that product to market. And as an elongation of that, what the product is, why they should fund your product, the quintessential why should they contribute to this crowdfunding campaign, the time frame for developing your product if you've reached those funding goals, basically, the incentives, rewards, and shares you're going to exchange with them for funding your business idea. All right, so you're not going to remunerate them. It's not a stakeholder or shareholder in the traditional sense of the word, but how you're going to reward them in some way, shape, or form, right? Is it basically an opportunity to participate in that event? Is it an opportunity to purchase that before it goes to market, basically? Is there going to be a prize or reward of some description, basically? But it's really about the second bullet point. Why should they fund your projects? When you're doing your mind map before you're doing your crowdfunding campaign, why should they fund it? It's the quintessential question. I need the quintessential answer at the end of the day, okay? So you need to set those goals, how much funding you need, your funding goal, the time frame to getting those funding, all right? So again, you can set that in certain crowdfunding platforms, and again, shop around, look at a different crowdfunding platform that's best fit for your campaign and your endeavor. Don't just go with the obvious one that you've heard about, basically. Shop around. There's multiple ones out there like GoFundMe and, as I said, Pozible, huge amounts of campaign platforms. How long it would take to develop your business or product at the end of the day as well. A lot of considerations, a lot of preemptive strikes I need you to undertake before you even think about basically going in and going live with your campaign. All right, back to time and capacity again, that you need to think about basically what you should be doing to hit the ground running. I want you to be shovel ready with the campaign, that you've thought of all the incidentals to mitigate and mediate that peak and trough cycle, basically, of when you're very, very popular and you're trending and you're getting traction, and more importantly, you're getting contributions and donations, but also when it's lagging as a campaign, either in the middle or towards the end, basically, or even on a daily basis. All right, so this is a constant appraisal all the time, and that's what we, it's great momentum to begin with, always. First 24 hours, 72 hours, basically, natural drop-off point, donor apathy occurs. It's not where you want to be, basically, so you need to think about that. So key phrase I love in the last sentence here, as referred to by government, manage expectations, manage your own expectations of how fast and how soon you think you're going to garner the funding, but also to manage the expectations of your donor and donor base in terms of basically what they can do for you, not only in terms of contribution, but how they can propagate to all their social media network that they've given. They've basically been part of this crowdfunding campaign, and they've shared it with their friends and family and colleagues, and they propagate the message that they should contribute as well. So they become a disciple of the message, or an ambassador of the product or service in that regard as well. Okay, so again, great resources already. You can see that government, this is why I wanted to reference this today, because government are emphasizing that it is an actual opportunity for you to get your project initiative up and running, basically crowdfunding. And we've seen that, and we've seen not only the niche and boutique, but something that would never have a chance of getting funding through traditional methods, whether it be grants or fundraising or sponsorship or a loan, has got great commercial viability through crowdfunding. That's another point I want to make. Research. Look at what works as campaigns. Study them. See what works in the Australian marketplace, what tipping point it has, what traction it has, particularly in your own field of influence and what you want to do as well, basically. So go out there and study. Look at what campaigns are running well on these crowdfunding platforms, how much they're garnering. What's the flow of money, basically? What's the traction point, the unique selling point, the point of difference that really gets them up and running, basically, as a point? What's the narrative that's built around it? Would it be back to that product or service website or social media at the end of the day? Check your legal responsibilities, obviously. So depending on the business idea and type of crowdfunding you choose, you need to look at the registration for licenses and meeting legal terms and conditions as per the crowdfunding platform provider, as you go through basically terms and conditions there, basically, and obviously look at what's being put out in terms of policy. Now, policy has been decreed by a number of state and federal government entities basically around crowdfunding, but it's still circumventing, it's still a grey area out there to a certain degree, basically. So please read the terms and conditions, #1, of your crowdfunding provider, basically, but just keep up to speed, basically, in terms of what government is legislating for as well. You may need to talk to your bookkeeper or accountant about that, basically. And then obviously, if it is a potential reward, especially as it says there, if it's especially important to your business idea to reward your backers in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, if you're going to do it financial, I'm saying maybe another way of doing it is better, so it doesn't fall into those pitfalls or grey area. Choose where to post your campaign. As I said, the platform is quintessential because you're picking that one deliberately to give you the most amount of traction. And that's what you're looking for, basically, the one that's going to give you the widest possible audience. And that's what you need to think about. So you need to research what would be best fit for your campaign at the end of the day. The type of business ideas they accept, the people they reach, are they targeting your cohort that you really want to target? So that what you're proposing actually does fit into what their normal audience is, normally the audience accepts and funds and contributes to. Their requirements, so some of them require, to set funds within a set period, so there's a boundary there for you within 4 to 6 weeks, as I said, of your campaign. Others are more open-ended. Some obviously would set a total. If you don't see that total, all the funding goes back to the contributors. Others will actually do part total. So if you obviously don't reach your funding goal, but you get to 70 or 80%, you still get access to that funding that comes back to you. Depends on the crowdfunding platform. So you really need to look at and shop around for that, basically. The associated fees, you're talking about bandwidth, maybe between 9 and 15% on certain crowdfunding platforms. Others go down to 5%. Again, shop around, look at what's pertinent and relevant. Don't just pick the first cab off the rank, basically, and look and think, right, this has got the brand name, this is what I need to use as a crowdfunding platform. Shop around, see what their usual target cohort is, see what their service fee are, and see, most importantly, as I said, that the emphasis is not necessarily on you to do all the promoting, all the selling, all the marketing, that actually they can help you with some of that as well, basically. So do the research at the end of the day. And this is, again, is not what I'm saying. So I talked about the time and capacity, which is a real going concern for me when I talk to my clients about crowdfunding, that they have the capacity to see this through as a campaign, but also the preemptive strike that they have researched basically what's out there in terms of what's the best platform for them. Has this campaign been funded before? Has this campaign run before? Why would people fund it again if it's already something similar, of similar ilk and work, has been funded elsewhere across Australia as well? So do your research. Post your campaign, basically, again. So, don't just leave it to the platform. Utilize all your social media, basically, to actually make it translatable. So whatever you see as a traction point to get people across, as I said, website, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the case may be, right? To get it across, basically, that you're going with this. Build the momentum, build a narrative. So this is very much about business storytelling, about basically the before, the during, and the after. And that's what we're looking for basically in terms of your narrative and your story. Basically, it's that holistic story of what you're doing as a campaign. So do a preemptive strike, get people crowdfunding ready, so they actually know your campaign's coming. So it's a bit of subliminal marketing. You know, you're tweeting out, basically, watch this space. We're going to be running a campaign. Set the momentum, set the goals, get them ingrained, get mind share already from potential funding bodies, basically, and what they want to get into, you know, potential funding individuals, should I say, and maybe bodies who want to commit to a program of size and nature you're trying to undertake, basically, at the end of the day. Okay. So what I see too often, though, is people running crowdfunding campaigns, as I said, and I'm going to keep on emphasizing this throughout today's webinar, being reactive rather than proactive. Proactive means doing the research, understanding the time and capacity it takes to run a campaign of this size and nature. And I mean that deliberately, even if you're only asking for $5,000 rather than $50,000, it's understanding the still amount of time and effort that needs to go into this at the end of the day. And in certain campaigns, I don't see that. Interact with your audience. Again, you can't just post it and leave it there and hope for the best. You need to be interacting with them throughout the days. Okay, comment, post on yourself, thank people, acknowledge people for their contributions, give them daily or weekly updates basically on what's happening with the campaign, share other components about it, tell them the story, as I said, that business storytelling component of what you're trying to achieve, reiterate that back to them time and time again across the board of what you're trying to do with your crowdfunding campaign, but keep them up to speed of what's happening. Not only from the point of view of basically the contributions, who else is giving money, and acknowledge them such, obviously that you've surpassed your goals, surpassed your expectations, and it's going exceedingly well. And show that reward back to society and validation to them that they made the right choice in funding your campaign at the end of the day. All right, and thank them at the end of the campaign. It may seem blatantly obvious, but the amount of people that just quintessentially, how should I phrase this, grab the money and run at the end of their campaign, basically, and never acknowledge, basically, either by putting something on their website or sending out emails to those people that contribute, or publicly thanking them on the platform and through other forms of social media, basically. This is not a one-off in terms of funding. You are going to be going back to market again, potentially for other crowdfunding campaigns. You want to retain these as clients or customers or funding entities, basically, moving forward. So you constantly want to engage them, not on a one-off principle, but consistency of approach is going to be key to this, basically, at the end of the day, because you're obviously looking for them to be part of your database or your mail outs from there on in, so they're constantly up to speed, while thanking them for their initial contribution and what's happening with their investment, what's happening with the funding, what's happening with your product or service that you're bringing to market at the end of the day. And again, I don't see a lot of that. The astute people do that exceedingly well. It's a consistent narrative, as I said. So don't drop the ball at the end of the process when you grab the money and it's all there and you'll be able to deliver. Be constantly interactive with those contributions and those contributors at the end of the day. So there's usually the three parties, obviously, in the crowdfunding arrangement, right? The initiator of the project, the venture or the campaign creator, the organization providing the crowdfunding website or platform, and the individuals or entities that contribute to pledge money, known as contributors at the end of the day. So each party may have tax or GST obligations depending on circumstances and the crowdfunding arrangement. So do your research around that, understand your obligations around that. And as I said, don't speculate, talk to your bookkeeper and your accountant around that if you need professional advice. So in types of crowdfunding, in types of donation-based crowdfunding, contributor makes a payment or donation, obviously, without receiving any return on investment. The donation may be simply to acknowledge the example on the crowdfunding website. So just acknowledge that contribution. Sometimes, basically, it's published as an actual amount. Sometimes it's not. Just a name listing is there, basically. Again, that's pertinent to the actual donation platform. Okay. So in reward-based crowdfunding, the promoter rewards a reward, so goods or services. Contributors to return on payment, for example, a contributor may receive a member's discount, basically, on future product purchases or future release to market of products and services, basically, as well. So there's an incentivization for them in some way, shape, or form. In many cases, there are different levels of types of reward according to the level of where the fundraising goals. So platinum, gold, silver, bronze, basically, you know, if you contribute to that amount, you get this as reward back, basically. But really look at your incentivizations, really look at what you want to offer as a value offering in terms of those different categories, but also even in the reward-based crowdfunding, just what are you going to give them back, basically? It's going to incentivize them. They want it or need it. A lot of the time we've seen in crowdfunding a lot of experiential, so people want certain experiences real life experiences. That's even changed obviously with COVID in terms of basically people want virtual experiences, but even the goods and services, basically, how can you actually give them an incentivization to say, look, you're going to be one of the first people that have an opportunity to purchase this. And since you've contributed this, you'll be in the first 5 or 10% of people before it goes to public release. So you've got to think about what's going to capture public attention. Again, back to sales and marketing. In equity-based crowdfunding, the contributor makes a payment in return for a share in the company, product, or service. The share in the company will provide the contributor with certain rights, including the right to participate in future profits or dividends, voting rights, and rights of return on capital. So again, you got to look at which type you want to go for, and which type is best for your business, and which type is best for your business model at the end of the day. So the income tax, you know, if you receive obviously or earn money, some of it may be assessed as income depending on the nature of the arrangement. I want to clearly make that known to you, obviously, in your role and your circumstantial assessment income. Similarly, if any amount is accessible, the income then costs related to gaining income be allowable deductions. So again, don't speculate with this. And this is where I see people basically, you know, not being narrow-minded about this or naive. Again, seek advice from your bookkeeper or accountant around the crowdfunding campaign, and definitely the crowdfunding platform around this, obviously, before committing to any campaign and signing off on the agreement at the end of the day. Make sure you ask these questions, make sure you get the answers to these questions. The tax laws which apply to investment and financial activity undertaken that are available, make sure you're aware of those. The buying of goods and services, buying shares, lending money apply to investment and financial activity conducted under crowdfunding. So same is applicable to loan, the banks, the credit unions, comes under the same legislation. All right, so be aware of the legislation anyway. You must keep records explaining all transactions that relates to your tax affairs, including crowdfunding arrangements. So again, don't speculate with those. Talk to your bookkeeper, talk to your accountant, talk to your CFO, whoever's going to help you there with this, basically, in putting this together. So don't be, again, speculative around your income tax and your income tax obligations with the ATO and what you should be subscribing to. Okay, so have a plan. Like everything you're going to do for your business, have a plan. So this is what I'm saying again, people being reactive rather than proactive, going back to the basics. I talked about the 5 W's earlier on, but even narrowing it down again, what the product is, why they should fund it again, the time frame for delivering the product if you reach your funding goals, and the incentives, rewards, and shares you'll exchange from the funding idea. Back to those 4 key points. So we have the 5 W's is more overarching, right? But really, if you're looking at the crowdfunding plan and crowdfunding campaign, these 4 key points is what I want you to be answering. I want you to have answers to these questions and then move forward basically upon that. Set those goals, all right? Have the plan, set the goals, all right? Some websites won't let you post your campaign unless you've set the funding goals. So be very clear with yourself, and more importantly, be very clear with your donors and your crowdfunding entities that basically how much it's going to cost at the end of the day, okay? The time frame we're getting the funding, how long it would take to develop. Now they're going to be interested in the last bullet point, which is basically when I make my contribution at the end of the day, how long will it take to develop the business or product or service at the end of the day? Okay. So again, have answers to these questions. The legal responsibilities in terms of registration for licenses, excuse me, and meet legal terms and conditions. Talk to your lawyer about that, seek advice from that as well. Again, business.gov.au and Business New South Wales have produced some documents on such. Certainly utilize those resources for you. They're freely available to access. But it's obviously a good idea to be across it yourself. Choose where to post your campaign, as I said. All right. Again, I'm re-emphasizing it because I want you to be very particular in your choice of how you're running this crowdfunding campaigns. Vast array of resources out there in terms of platforms. You got to look at the right one for your sector, the right one for your product and service, and the right one for you that you feel is going to deliver. More importantly, it's going to get you customer attainment and customer awareness for what you're trying to bring to market in terms of your crowdfunding. So be wary of that basically. Again, I'm looking at this as a stepped approach, a planned approach, a researched approach to your crowdfunding campaign, rather than jumping in the deep end of the pool and thinking about basically, you know, I'll be okay on the day. You won't, because we've seen a lot of people obviously look at doing this very, very poorly and very, very badly at the end of the day. Okay. Post your campaign, as I said, elsewhere. Very, very important. Interact with them. And as I said, utilize all the platforms, yeah? And again, video is huge, right? I can't emphasize that enough, right? So, 30 seconds to 3 minutes in duration, that corporate video, that pop-up video, people love that. And certainly if you've a dedicated YouTube or video channel, basically you can use that and sync it out basically and get it out through your all other channels and networks. That'd be fantastic. But visual is really, really good. You see a lot of people doing visual basically with crowdfunding campaigns, and I would advocate that quite strongly. I think you need to look at that basically rather than just doing the blatant description. I think visual is very, very good. So either you to camera or basically a design video, get working with a graphic designer basically, because the more visually impressive, we've seen obviously the more visually appealing, which is obviously appealing to those funders at the end of the day to give. So spend the time and effort on actually putting together the work involved in that. Once you raise the funds, thank them, as I said, very, very important. Some of the advantages of crowdfunding, well, compared to other sources of funding, crowdfunding can provide customers that believe in your product, the opportunity to interact directly with your customers, who are also your investors, the ability to get feedback from your customers while you develop and test your product, which I think is fantastic, right? So it's customer research, it's market research at the end of the day. As you're bringing this product to market, they're telling you what's going right and what's going wrong, what they like, what they don't like at the end of the day. That's valuable research findings for you, okay, that you should spend time and effort and finance on otherwise, basically. And obviously going back to the first point, customers that believe in your product or service, give them that value, reassurance, they want to stay with you as a customer at the end of the day. So there's an awful lot of opportunities and benefits there for you, but you must realize them through that planned approach basically that you need to take at the end of the day, okay? So I advocate that quite strongly, the planning and do your research, okay? Very, very important in that regard, okay? Disadvantages though, okay? No guarantee that you'll reach your funding goal, obviously, within a set time frame. That's true. The need to campaign and present your product well to get to backers, the time and effort it's going to take you to get out there and market it basically through various channels, not just the crowdfunding platform itself. And the time needed to interact with your backers and update them on your product and time development. So time and capacity, going back to that point that I made earlier on as well. Okay, so again, it's not, you can't be doing this in a haphazard fashion or haphazard approach. You really need to think about a considered way of doing this and a way of getting traction. All right, what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. Age-old adage, but it's true. Okay, so no shortcuts on this basically at the end of the day. The ones that show and reflect time, effort basically, and interaction with the clients are the ones that achieve their funding goal as crowdfunding campaigns. And then obviously you're able to propagate and attract those customers, those new customers, into other mechanisms, other facets of your services. They can do the on purchase and you can do the on sell with them. Okay, providing rewards to your backers to encourage donations, so that incentivization, does that still sit well with you ethically, or even what are you going to offer them as incentivizations at the end of the day that are non-numeric and non-financial? The need to deliver the product that has been promised to your backers, so expectation equals reality, that you need to go out there and do this once the funding is coming in. And competition with other businesses crowdfunding their products and ideas. So have you determined your point of difference? Have you determined your unique selling point? Because there may be someone else on another crowdfunding platform or the same crowdfunding platform who's offering something of similar worth and ilk basically to you. Why would they give to you over the other crowdfunding campaign? Again, determining your point of difference, that competitor analysis, as you would do in business, that you need to determine this for yourself as well, basically. So you can see there's a lot of determinations, a lot of planning, a lot of research, again, to emphasize those three facets that need to be done: the before, the during, and the after, along with the evaluation, the acquittal, and the auditing of your own campaign as well. And that's something else that I don't necessarily see from a number of people who run campaigns. As I said, they haven't evaluated why it worked or it didn't work at the end of the day before they go back live again to bring another product or service to a crowdfunding campaign on another platform. You need to get in the habit of evaluating it. Okay, now you'll get the report obviously from the crowdfunding platform itself, but you need to look at it yourself and understand what worked well and what didn't work well, because it's not going to be the only time that you're going to look at doing a crowdfunding initiative. Okay, so be wary of this. Okay, what happens if you don't reach your goal? As I said, depending on area, it can vary. Basically, some would allow you raise the funds and keep those funds as you've got to 60, 70, 80% value of your goal. Others, you'll obviously have to look at basically refunding to those who've already given. It's all about the terms and conditions pertinent to each crowdfunding website. So be wary of that. That's why choice is so important in terms of what actual crowdfunding platform you're going to use. Okay. So you need to, obviously, if you can't implement it, you may need to offer those refunds, let your backers know exactly how you use the funds, which is a real determinable option that you don't necessarily have to give the money back, but you may be realigning or reappropriating that funding to another facet of the service, product, resource, what you do. Most backers are au fait with that and comfortable with that because it's had a clear explanation of what's happening, right? You need to do that or offer other rewards to the backers instead, basically. So have your backup options prepared, understand this may happen, and again, be proactive rather than reactive to that at the end of the day. Why people give, 80% of donors like to make a contribution through crowdfunding platforms because they feel connected to the projects they give back, right? They also feel it highlights the causes receive attention under circumstances that otherwise wouldn't have got the funding. So that connection is the key word there. Why would I fund you? Why would I engage with you? Why would I feel I need to contribute to this campaign? What's the value offering at the end of the day? Why this campaign over another campaign? You know, those that are prolific as givers on crowdfunding platforms go and shop on crowdfunding platforms of what they're going to contribute and what they're going to give money to. So you need to look at the same way what would attract them and stop and look at each campaign of you and why your campaign needs to stand out from all the other campaigns. And that's down to the marketing and the promotion. And that is down to time and effort on your behalf and not just the crowdfunding platform's behalf as well. So be mindful of all these factors. Create that video, as I said, right? It's huge traction on the video, all right? So they can see it, feel it, hear it, all aspects of it. They utilize all their 5 human senses, really, you know, even touch to a degree, basically, if it's interactive. Be yourself. Authenticity is key in the video, right? So you need to be in there in some way, shape, or form, basically, or your organization, okay? And they need to see the end user, the end purpose, and how it's going to bring something to market, basically, that's very attractive. So get in the habit of business storytelling, get in the habit basically of having that visual narrative, get in the habit basically of substantiating what you're trying to say, not just in well-written text that's clear, concise, and compelling, but obviously in a script that's going to be translated in a visual sense basically as well, okay? More and more, this is coming down to content writing, more and more it's coming down to business storytelling, more and more this is coming down to visual appealing. All right, so you need to think about these factors when you're putting together your crowdfunding campaign. Okay, very, very important in that regard. So as I said, you know, I talked about the typical duration and the lull, basically. Avoid those long campaigns. I think there's a mindset with certain people, but certainly when they're doing their first crowdfunding campaign, just to keep it going and see how far we can go and how much money we can get, and hold on that if it's not working in week 2 or week 3, it may work in week 6 or week 8, or might work in week 12 or 14. It won't. All right, it's died, it's dead, it's done. It's basically, you need to come out a different way or a new campaign at the end of the day. So you need to think about its natural duration point as optimally 4 to 6 weeks from what we're measuring in the past, basically, and crowdfunding campaign platforms, excuse me, have substantiated this basically in terms of, you know, this, depending on the size and nature of the campaign, certainly, but that's where you're going to have the attention span to a degree, right? People are going to move on otherwise at the end of the day. So get away from those long campaigns and hanging on dearly and hoping for the best that someone's going to come in at the end basically and give you a lump sum, or just going to be encouraged towards the end to do that. They may through luck and circumstance, but it's not the norm. Okay. The tipping point seems to be, project seems to be 30% basically, all right? And if they reach that point of 85%, they're likely to reach the target. Current success rate is about 44% generally. Basically, it's also worth noting a Pozible report a success rate of 56% on their platform, which is quite good. Most popular reward category, basically, and this is not obviously not giving them financial return, but obviously within the category of sizable, what the commodity or the value of the service you're offering to them as an incentivization, basically, is in terms of numerics and dollars. And again, you know, you look at the size in Australia, $30 million Australian raised in crowdfunding since 2013 in this country. Huge. All right, so a huge opportunity for you, basically. People undervalue it for some unknown reason, or it's seen as an addendum, basically, in terms of funding after the, you know, the bigger ones, which people talk about in terms of grants or tenders, and obviously fundraising and sponsorship and direct donations or government contributions. It's understanding that crowdfunding is a lot of work and value. Only make it translatable if work and value if you actually put the time and effort, as I said, into it, and the planning that's involved. But this is it's there. You can see the commercial reality for yourselves. All right, it's a lot there that you can ascertain and utilize. Okay, donations tend to be small. All right, but it's the cumulative effect. All right, well, you can get bigger donations without doubt, and they are there, and I can substantiate. I've seen them into the hundreds of dollars, basically, and even thousands of dollars from certain individuals or organizations. But optimally, it's 0 to 50 or it's 0 to 100, basically, depending on the platform and depending on the campaign. And you're hoping for that cumulative effect, obviously, at the end of the day. So my top 10 tips around it really are: watch inspiring fellow campaigns, self-promote like mad, get out there and use all mechanisms and resources, particularly online, to say we're running a crowdfunding campaign before, during, and after as part of the acknowledgement piece. And oh, you missed out kind of notification, but we'll be coming at it again in the future. Create the video. As I said, create the video, really get out there and spend the time and effort on a really good high production video. Don't jump the gun, basically. Do the research, do the planning to put together that articulate campaign. Follow the instructions as provided by the crowdfunding platform. Stick to them. If you deviate from them, track record on those who've worked with crowdfunding platforms, including myself, you make the mistake at your own peril. It's going to not work out for you. Basically, these are tried and trusted. They know what they're doing. Basically, work with the service provider. Have a POA after the campaign. Basically, pamper your project. Okay, fluff it up. Basically, talk it up. Substantiate what you're saying, but really get in the habit of screaming from the rooftops, basically, and pamper it, basically, and really massage it consistently throughout the period that it's going through that crowdfunding campaign. Tap investors, basically, people that maybe contributed. Go back to your database, go back to your CRM, basically, go back and say that it is a new funding opportunity for this business, for this organization. We've asked you for direct donations before, we've asked you to contribute in many different shapes and forms. Here's a new opportunity for you to fund something different through a different mechanism. Hire a professional SEO writer. Certainly, if you're not really proficient on the content and the search engine optimization, basically, I'd get someone in to help you basically build that. So content writer may be needed just to write the campaign up from a sales and marketing point of view, and the SEO raising that can get you in there, basically, that when I go looking for you and I do a search through the search engines that are provided on the crowdfunding platforms, that I find you pretty fast on page one. Okay, and be patient. Okay, it's like, you're there for 4 to 6 weeks potentially, basically. So it's not going to happen day one. It may have a surge in day one because of momentum that you created. Fantastic. Kudos to you. Well done. It may even last 72 hours, but it's going to drop off at a certain point, right? Hang in there, basically, for the campaign. Resuscitate. Get back in there, right? Light the fire again, light the fire of passion and enthusiasm in your funders, basically, and get them across the line in terms of that funding at the end of the day. Very, very important. That's me. Feel free to contact me if you have any further questions. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. I'm going to open it up for questions now, both from the chat room and from yourselves. So fire away.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Keith, for such a great presentation. So like Keith mentioned, I would recommend you type in your questions for Keith while we have him here, so to quiz him on his knowledge. So we did have a few that came through a little bit earlier during the session. So we had one from Natalie. Oh, sorry if I'm saying it incorrect. So I've seen some campaigns with video and some with photos only. Are there any stats on which works better?
Yeah, as I said, Natalie, I think I've covered off on that, and I'll reiterate it. Video definitely works well, better than any other photo or content, basically. So I'd go with video first time, every time, basically, if you have the option. Certain instances, I've seen people use handheld devices and do it themselves. That works to a degree, but the more slicker it looks, the better it looks, and it's more obviously visually appealing as well as more attractive for the funder as well, basically, at the end of the day.
Okay, great. She also asked, would you mind showing us successful campaigns and explain what helped the campaign become viral and get traction?
I'm not able to at the moment, I don't have any up here that I can screen share, but I can talk through a couple I've worked with on, basically, certainly in the NGO not-for-profit space with a number of providers, basically, across Australia. And again, it was the lead-in time and lead-in marketing that they actually made their campaigns fantastic and very much prolific at the end of the day. I mean, I've worked on campaigns to save heritage buildings and through crowdfunding. I've worked with musicians, basically, to build an album to market, basically, that they could get funded. I've worked with a watch manufacturer that was creating a certain boutique watch as well, basically, limited edition. So they've been quite varied basically, but it was all about the marketing, it was all about creating the profile. People can only help you if they know you exist, and that's the profile in advance of the crowdfunding campaign as well. So it's get out there, the sales and marketing basically, particularly the marketing ahead of the campaign, then use the same mentality or ethos that you have in the preemptive strike throughout the campaign on crowdfunding as well. So it's really about the getting out there and building that profile and doing that drip feed, basically like a teaser trailer, and say, look, this is coming, and this is the momentum, and this is the either social value or purpose to doing this campaign that taps into, pulls the heartstrings and the rationale in people's heads, or the exclusivity factor, which we found around the watches, basically, whereby it was only a limited edition. There was only so many going to be manufactured, basically. They were very boutique and very expensive. Each of these watches were, from recollection, starting price in the watch was like $600, $700 each watch, basically. So again, it wasn't cheap and cheerful. It was very much that was appealing to a certain audience in that crowdfunding campaign, and they were playing up on an exclusivity factor that you were only going to be one of so many people in Australia that had that watch. So again, basically, that's what you need to do, is really emphasize, like, again, the marketing you do beforehand will sustain the marketing you do in the crowdfunding campaign.
Okay, perfect. And she also asked, is there a benchmark of a platform you can share with us in terms of fees, number of backers they have, which type of product or service they promote well, etc.?
Well, I have as I said, one of my favorites in Australia is Pozible. I have a lot of time for it, basically. I think it's been very successful since about 2008, 2009 as a platform, basically, and started off in the art sector. Has really gone multidisciplinary now, and I really like it at the end of the day. I think it's one you can learn a lot from as an organization as well, and studying what's out there. So you definitely have a look at Pozible, P-O-Z-I-B-L-E. It's one of my favorites here in Australia.
Okay, great. Thank you for the recommendation. And she also asked, what does POA mean?
Position of attention, basically, so that you can stand out. All right. So basically, how do you? It's another way of saying really unique selling point or point of difference. POD, standing out from the crowd at the end of the day. Because if you're not doing that in your crowdfunding campaign, you become defunct and irrelevant very, very fast in terms of your crowdfunding campaign. So I'm just gonna. Sorry, I live in the land of acronyms, so I should have spelled that out basically. But it's very much about basically standing out from the crowd, and if you're not doing that, you're not quintessentially going to have a good crowdfunding campaign. It's a rule of thumb in business anyway. I know, how do you get your market share? So get in the habit of using, the same endeavors that you do in your business practice across in your crowdfunding practices as well. I'm sure a lot of you do that anyway. Just translate that mindset and intellectual property across and utilize what you know works for your business in this realm into the crowdfunding realm.
Okay, great. Terry came through with a question, where are the platforms to post campaigns? I know you suggested.
Yeah, going back, I mean, I give a couple at the start, so I'll just go back to, bear with me a second, I'll do this way, scrolling through all these slides. I mean, these are some of the bigger ones internationally, obviously. GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Crowdwise, Rocket Hub, Indiegogo, obviously some of the big ones from the States. Pozible I haven't put in there, but there's a multitude. Each country, even in Australia, we have a multitude as well, basically. GoFundMe is very, very big for a lot of campaigns, obviously, here in Australia as well. So you need to be doing your shopping. You need to shop around, basically, and see what's out there for yourself, basically, and what's best fit for you and your business, and most importantly, for your campaign.
Okay, great. It seems like we've got all through the questions in the chat box. Is there anything that you'd like to finish on before we close up, Keith?
Just to reiterate, have a plan, have a way of getting, basically a way of marketing this, understand the expectation basically around you in terms of the work that's going to be undertaken to get your crowdfunding live on that platform, basically, and then be consistent in your approach in delivering that, basically, and do the after, which is thanking them, acknowledging them, re-engaging them. Again, don't lose them as customers. It's a really good opportunity for you to get them on board in this first instance through crowdfunding. So again, have that beginning, middle, and end approach to your actual crowdfunding.
Okay, great. We've got one more question that came through that I'll shoot through. So it's from Dalar. So if we want to do a not-for-profit project, what would be the expectations if no profit expected, e.g. Educational benefits?
Yeah, it'll be about the social values. People, that's where you're looking at a commonality of approach in terms of people feeling something that you're delivering of social promise and worth for the greater community at large. So I'm giving because, you know, you capture my mind share, you capture some of my empathy as well at the same time, and I have a feel good factor around giving at the end of the day. If you can, and you know, if you can incite me in some way as a reward. Now, a lot of the time that would be inviting out people, if it's feasible to do so, given COVID and geographical location, to see what you're doing in terms of the community. An awards night, an acknowledgement night of donors and sponsors, basically, as a lot of entities do in the NGO sector. That'll be really, really good. But a simple public acknowledgement is always good as well, just on the website, or a thank you letter, basically, just some way of engaging with them to show, look, we really appreciate your time, effort, and obviously financial investment here in some way, shape, or form.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much again, Keith, for a great presentation. Before we close up this session, I would just like to mention some of our upcoming webinars and workshops. So on the 20th of October, we've got Securing Government Business Grants. How much does starting a business really cost on the 22nd of October? The latest and greatest social media strategies on the 4th of November. Evaluating, reporting and acquitting government business grants on the 9th of November. Your online brand 2.0. So if you have been to Kieran's first sessions, we do recommend you registering for the second lot of sessions. How to win ideal customers without big marketing budgets on the 12th of November. What you need to know before going for a bank loan on the 19th. Digital Storytelling 2.0 on the 23rd of November, your personal brand on the 1st, and how to create a marketing plan that actually works on the 9th of December. So we have lots of events, so just jump on our website and you can register for those. So don't forget to stay connected and follow us on our socials to stay updated with the latest news and events. And you will receive a feedback form from Business Connect asking how you found the session today. So we would really appreciate you filling in those forms to let us know how you found the session. So thanks again. Thanks, Keith, and thank you for joining everyone. Don't forget, if you do want to book in a session with one of our Business Connect advisors, you can simply contact the office or reply back to a thank you email. But thanks again, and we'll see you all online soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.